What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to talk about something that I touched on yesterday in the Nerd Theory stream with Josh regarding Leslie Headland's Acolyte show that's coming up. I essentially said in last night's stream, last night's podcast, I was like, yo, I'm really excited for this Acolyte show. I think it's going to be pretty sweet. It takes place, a couple hundred years before episode 1, and it's going to be focusing on a dark side female character. Who that is, I don't know, but sounds pretty interesting. I'm all for Star Wars going into more of a dark realm and showing us a bit of the point of views of other characters, not just the good guys necessarily. In yesterday's stream, I accidentally read something that I hadn't read before, and I thought it was something else. She essentially said, and I'm going to read it too again, and there's now an article created, but essentially she said that the people she's hired on her show, some of them have never seen Star Wars before. And when I read that, I was a little bit like, why would you do that? So her explanation for that is going to be what is in here, and then I'm going to give my take on it too. So to recap, she said, mostly what I looked for were people that I felt could execute a great script. And then in a job interview, just really talking to people who had different life experiences than I did and had different connections to Star Wars than I did. Great. And then she goes on to say, there were people like myself that were later in life Filoni acolytes. I literally had one writer that was like, I have never seen any of them. I've never seen any Star Wars media. And she's texting me before we started the room. She's like, Luke and Leia are brother and sister? What the? Laughs. It was so great because I would really love to know from someone who is not fully immersed in this fandom, what do you think about the pitch we just made? So while she did her due diligence and did a lot of background work and research, at the same time, she was somebody that we would kind of talk to and say, okay, so if we take all the kind of signifiers out of it, and this is Star Wars version of X, what does it mean to you? So right there to that, I say, yeah, this is now elaborating on something that wasn't in yesterday's article interview. And it essentially talks about how her point of view is that she would like to have not just people who really have been fans of Star Wars their whole lives or for a good portion of their life, but to have people who are fans of Star Wars just coming into it with a fresh take on everything. To me, I disagree with this. Then again, I'm just a fan. I'm just a YouTuber. I'm not a multi-million-dollar, show creator and director, writer. But my point of view of this is, the same, I believe, as what George Lucas's was. And you don't need to not know Star Wars in order to have a different spin or a different take on certain characters. That kind of a character development comes from just being creative in itself. But to know the characters backwards and forwards, and you can only really do that the best way possible by being fans of this franchise since you were a little kid, not just, hey, I got hired for this job for Star Wars. I've never seen a single one of them. I didn't even know Luke and Leia were brother and sister. And to think that that's going to give a fresh spin on Star Wars because they don't know any of the lore or anything, minus, mind you, she's saying she's doing her due diligence. But really, how much due diligence can one do compared to, let's say, a fan like you or I, or some of these, like Dave Filoni, for example, who is in that position to be making these kinds of shows. You compare it to someone, let's say Rian Johnson was a big Star Wars fan. Let's say J.J. Abrams was a big Star Wars fan. But look at what they created. It wasn't necessarily well received all across the board, much like The Mandalorian was. We can agree that The Mandalorian was more well received unanimously than perhaps the sequels, The Last Jedi or The Rise of Skywalker or whatever. And that is simply because the two people behind The Mandalorian are not only extremely creative, which I'm not taking anything away from the other people, like Rian Johnson and JJ, whatever you think, whatever you want of them. I'm trying to say that the amount of knowledge that they have and passion that they have for this franchise completely outweighs anyone else before them. Ryan and JJ and these guys. So my understanding of what Leslie Headland's going to do, and look, this is a show that I have been touting for a very long time. I'm extremely excited for it, and I'm still excited for it. But I wanted to clarify what my thoughts were as we got this new piece of information here, that I really don't think that you need to have someone on your team that has never seen Star Wars before in order to give a different view or different take or whatever. I understand the logic behind it, but I don't agree with it. The logic behind it, I believe, from my interpretation of what she's saying, is that if you have someone who's never seen Star Wars before, they're not locked into these, you can't do this or you can't do that kind of things. But that's sort of the point. There are things in Star Wars that don't make sense and do make sense. Like, for example, in the High Republic comic, when the Jedi was taking her lightsaber and putting it in the wall and trying to slow down, it looks cool, you know? But that's coming from someone who perhaps doesn't know Star Wars or has never really seen Star Wars or doesn't understand. You can't take something like that and, you know, from a movie, like a sword, or like if you've seen what's that movie with Sylvester Stallone, Cliffhanger, and, you know, try to like slow down on the cliff by putting an axe or something, or whatever, a pike in the freaking ice in the mountain, and slow yourself down. It just doesn't work. So understanding the logic and the science behind Star Wars and the lore is something that I feel is only cemented really, really well, not just by watching it for the first time and doing your due diligence, and I don't mean to be arrogant when I say that, but really doing your due diligence by being a fan and hiring people who have been fans their entire lives. There are tons of creative people who have been Star Wars fans. Star Wars is a huge, huge IP, and it's something that has fans from 40 years ago to now, you know, 50 years ago to now almost. So it's not hard to find talented people who are great writers and also understand the story very well. But that being said, you know, I hope her decision is something that will give us some different takes and different. And by different, I don't mean just different for the sake of being different. I mean different for the sake of being cool and good and making sense in Star Wars. And I hope everything is overseen by Dave Filoni, who now, as we know, is the executive producer, I believe, of Lucasfilm. He is the head honcho, and he is the only guy to do it. So he's the only guy that I would want to be taking over Lucasfilm after George Lucas has left. So I'm very happy about that. I mean, yeah, obviously you don't want a room full of people who are just agreeing with every sort of creative decision you have, because, well, then that won't yield the best product. You want people who come up with other ideas, or maybe have, you know, a different idea, or don't agree with your idea at all completely, to be able to find some middle ground, or, you know, get some different perspectives. And maybe, you know, maybe you may not agree with them either, but then that leads you guys to somewhere else where you may come up with a really fantastic idea. And it's this building upon opposing ideas and beliefs that eventually land you in the perfect spot. So I don't know why she would bring that up, but I don't think that you need to hire people who have never seen Star Wars before. You know, it's like I'm a carpenter and I want to build, you know, a chair, and I hire a bunch of people to come in there and help me build this chair, and then all of a sudden I hire a butcher. It's like, oh, I didn't know this is how you you know, put the wood on the lathe, and you know, it's like, why am I hiring a butcher? I want to hire like full-on carpenters. Maybe I'll even hire like a metal shop guy, you know, like people who actually have something to do with that industry and understand it, and not just, you know, like an architect or something, but not just like someone that's like completely irrelevant. So to me, the only thing, and I'm still super excited for this show, the only thing I don't like and I don't understand is having someone in there that's never seen Star Wars before. Because I've said it time and time again, I'm gonna say it now, Star Wars is not a typical story where you can just watch it and all of a sudden you can start to just make stories about it. You have to really understand this movie, and understand, I say movie because it's like the first all six. You gotta really know that, and the only way you can know it properly, sure, is by one watch through for the first time in your life. But, you know, finding Star Wars fans isn't difficult. You can do that. You can find lifelong Star Wars fans and still have talented writers at the same time. So it's not sort of like a, you know, one or the other kind of thing. So I'm confused as to that point, but hopefully it'll allow it to give her some completely different left field points of view, I suppose. And from there, you know, we'll see how it goes. And as a fan, I'm excited for the show. I think right now I'm saying I hope it's going to be fantastic. I'm very intrigued with the concept. I think the idea of following darker side characters, you know, like Boba Fett, the Acolyte, this and that, I can see where they're going. Maybe Inquisitors, if that rumor is true. I think it's going to be pretty fantastic. And mind you, you know, George Lucas, in all of the making of books for the original trilogy, he never had a room full of yes men and women. In fact, he had, I'm sure they were there, but he had a lot of people who were constantly going against what he was saying. You know, some people wanted Luke to die, and he was like, no, you don't need to do that. That's like alienating the audience. You don't need to kill off the main character to evoke some sort of emotion. And I think it was, who was it? Irvin Kershner that said it, or Robert Marquand? It was one of the big guys. Either way, that for Return of the Jedi or Empire Strikes, so I think it was Return of the Jedi. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about this. Thank you for your time. Find me on StarWarsTheory.com and, of course, my podcast every single day on Spotify, Amazon, and Apple iTunes. I'll catch you guys later. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, remember, the Force will be with you always.